You are now entering the memory mortuary, where your childhood is reflected, bisected, and dissected before being laid to rest. So let's see what's on the slab for our morticians today on this episode of the Memory Mortuary.
No, I'm telling you those weren't my charges. I did not purchase several planks of wood, a hammer, and nails, all to fix a hole in my mortuary roof. Nope. No, those aren't my charges. What? The Star Wars Vintage Collection Smuggler's Run Millennium Falcon pre-order down payment? Yeah, that's mine. That's mine. Don't cancel that. Actually, expect to see 3 more of those payments by December. Okay, great. Yeah. No, again, all that wood is not mine. I did not make that purchase. And you know what? I hope you catch the bastard who did this to you. They're robbing you guys blind. It's a huge charge on my card. Trying to sully my good name. Okay. Thank you. I need to go. Yeah. No, cancel the charge. Okay. I'll expect the new card in the mail soon. Okay. Bye. Great news, Gabe! I just saved us a bunch of money and fixed the hole in the ceiling.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Look, we seem to have a code 316 here. There appears to be a foreign object wrapped around the waist of this body.
Sure. Let's just unzip the body bag a bit more. Oh no.
What?
We need to go.
What? Why? Relax.
We need to go. We need to get the out of here. He'll be here any second. He'll know we have it.
Who? What are you going on about? What is this thing?
That's the Smoking Skull WWF World Heavyweight title. That belongs to only one man, and he'll... Go! Run! He's here! We need to leave!
But what about the bodies? We have a responsibility to the people!
To hell with the people! Responsibility! We need to go! Go! The back door! Quick! He's here!
Shit, I have to go back for my copy of Song Adventure 2, 10th birthday edition. I can't leave that!
No, Gabe! It's not worth it!
Oh! Stunner!
Ah, Gabe! No! My God! He's been broken in half! Come on. Come on. No! For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life.
Hello, and welcome to the Memory Mortuary. It's me, the Entity, and I am here joined by our host morticians, Andreas Marengos.
Hey, it's me.
And Gabe.
Hello.
And we are going to be talking about something that I have no knowledge about at all, the WWF Attitude Era.
Yes, we are.
So the format of this episode is going to be a tiny bit different in that I know absolutely nothing. Gabe, from my understanding, doesn't know that much.
No.
But Andreas knows a strange amount about this topic.
I lived it. I saw it. I was one with it. It's kind of like having war memories.
But these are good.
Yeah, but they're stressful.
Okay.
They're stressful. There are things that happen in everyday life that give me Attitude Era flashbacks.
Oh, okay.
That's very interesting. So with that, I think I'll just turn it over to you, Andreas, and if you want to kind of enlighten us about what the WWF Attitude Era was, what it was to you, and, how it stands in pop culture. And
Okay, so what I'm going to do for this episode is going to be a little bit like a story time.
Okay.
So you can buckle up
Mm.
because it's a bumpy ride. Because I'm telling you right now, to get to the Attitude Era, which I pin as an era of professional wrestling that started on November 9th, 1997, and lasted until about June 27th, 2002. It encompassed 241 episodes of Monday Night Raw, the Monday Night WWF professional wrestling show. It encompassed 64 pay-per-views, and it encompassed 150 episodes of SmackDown, the sister show to WWE Raw. It's a huge chronicle, but before I can even get into that, I need to lay the groundwork of what professional wrestling in America is.
Please do.
To start, I want you to consider this is the turn of the century. Not this century, but the turn of 1800s to 1900s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have these traveling circuses, right?
Like vaudeville.
Like vaudeville, exactly. And they are a very American idea of let's get a bunch of people with either special skills or in some cases some sort of genetic difference that they can sell as a bearded woman sort of stuff. Well, they'd always have a professional strongman. And one of the big things about the professional strongman was you would find that they would be open to anyone to come challenge them, to try to wrestle them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many times, because this is all for show, they would have a plant in the audience that they'd pick, and the strong man would, lift the guy up and do like 15 over-the-head slams and everything else. So professional wrestling has ties in that. It also has ties in the underground kind of fighting world and in real classic wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling, where in that, it's an actual competition to see who won. I want you to imagine one day that two guys get into a ring or a circle or wherever they're going to fight, and they say to themselves, why do we need to hit each other, to hurt each other? Don't you think we can make a lot more money if we, hammed it up a little bit? Maybe we ended this on a cliffhanger, told them if they met us in the next town, they'll see what happens next. And then people started to realize, instead of really hurting each other, this is about the money, this is about the show.
Are you admitting right now that wrestling is fake?
So I don't entirely take offense to that phrase.
Okay.
But professional wrestling is fixed. Professional wrestling is predetermined.
Would you call it theater?
It borders on theater at points.
Okay.
It's a mix between stuntsmanship, theater, athletic performances. It's a whole hodgepodge. And really, it all comes down to the fact that it's one of the most American things possible. It's about the money. That's what it is. It's always, how do we get people to want to come back? Because sure, a lot of people will show up to see, what was that last big fight? Pacquiao versus McGregor, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people will show up to see those two fight. Okay. But they'll fight once, and maybe they'll have a rematch.
Mm-hmm.
But how many people will come to see them fight after Pacquiao kidnapped McGregor's daughter and brought her to, and threw her into the Hudson River and then took the professional wrestling title and beat him over the head with it and handcuffed him to the back of a garbage truck and dragged him through the city?
That sounds very illegal.
Well, these are what I'm doing is summarizing some plot lines that happened during professional wrestling during the Attitude Era.
Oh my God.
The idea was we are going to go all out because there is a threat. And there was a threat during the Attitude Era, which I'll get into. Okay. So that's the establishment. You have to understand that that's how professional wrestling works and that's its origins.
Okay.
It's a hodgepodge of people who are realizing we don't really have to beat the crap out of each other. If I protect you and you protect me, we'll both get hurt to a minimum, if as best we can, and we'll both walk away with a solid amount of money. You've seen Nacho Libre, right?
Oh, I've lived Nacho Libre.
You love Nacho Libre.
I do.
Nacho Libre, he goes in and he wrestles every match, and he loses. And in the first match he loses, and what does the guy do when he comes in?
Well, he gives them money, because everybody gets a cut.
Everybody gets a cut. It's a show. You're all performers. And that entices you to protect the people you're in the ring with. Because if I'm not getting paid, if I lose this staged thing, I'm going to do everything in my power to win. Okay. But if everyone's getting paid fairly the same amount of money, I'm going to protect this guy because we seem to get a lot of people in the crowd when I wrestle this guy. And I want to fight him again. And I want him to work because he's going to make sure I work. With that being established, in 1952, WWF is formed. And this is the pre-WWF. Which
sounds like a website.
It does. So in 1952, this is formed. And back in this time frame, professional wrestling was done by regions. There was no giant federation or entertainment business. You had a northeastern region, a southeastern region, a Philadelphia region, and all these regions had different promotions. And this went on for decades until Vince McMahon Jr., who for most of his childhood never knew his father because I guess his father and his mother had him. The father left the situation, and Vince McMahon was left in a trailer home with his mother and a stepfather.
This is Vince McMahon of
today.
Of today.
He
How old's the guy?
he's 73.
Is he
74?
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my god.
He looks good for 73.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he is 74.
Oh my
Wow.
god.
So
He was, just to recap, was raised in a trailer
yes,
with an absentee father.
with an absentee father,
Okay.
he was he had his mother and his stepfather taking care of him. Now, from what I've found, he admitted to his mother sexually abusing him. So,
Wait,
as-
the mother was sexually abusing
yes.
him? Interesting.
So,
That's terrible.
so he one day got up and left, and he said, "I'm gonna go find my dad."
Okay.
And he went up to the New England wrestling area,
Mm-hmm.
which would be primarily stationed in New York for Madison Square Garden and, of course, Connecticut.
Right.
And he'd get up this way, he'd find his father, and his father would tell him, "Okay, you know what? I get you're my son, so I think the only thing I really owe you is a job here. You can be our ring announcer." And so
Oh.
he was a ring announcer.
That makes sense.
He was a ring announcer for his father for a couple decades until in 1982 when he bought the company from his father.
Okay.
So he buys out the company from his father, and as soon as he does, his strategy is enough of this region shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to buy out everything. I am going to create a complete new world order, ironically, not to get us ahead of ourselves. He's going to reestablish the way that professional wrestling is done in America.
Okay.
So he starts offering these contracts to the best wrestlers in all these other regions, which is a no-no at the time. You never poach talent.
Mm-hmm.
He does it. He gets in Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, the Junkyard Dog, Rowdy Roddy Piper. He gets in all these huge names at the time, and the one professional wrestler that he inherited from his father, his biggest name before Hulk Hogan, is Andre the Giant.
Oh.
So Andre the Giant was a professional wrestler that was so large, both literally and figuratively,
Mm-hmm.
that Vince McMahon's father would actually go and rent out Andre the Giant to other regions.
I imagine this is pre-Princess Bride.
Yes, very well pre-Princess Bride. Princess Bride would be one of the last things Andre the Giant does before his death.
Oh.
So Vince McMahon now wants to create something that can beat out every other region.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, in the prologue here, he does it. He goes and defeats nearly every other region in America and creates a pretty much a monopoly. The only region that he seems to have a problem beating entirely is the southeastern region, primarily Florida.
Also not shocking to me.
He can't, for the life of him, beat them. Because Ted Turner of Turner Broadcasting, so TBS, Turner Classic Movies,
Right.
decides, I really like wrestling. I think I might start my own wrestling. So how does he do it? He takes all of the little regions that Vince McMahon hasn't defeated yet, combines them all together, takes all their talent, pulls them together, and begins what's called the WCW. This begins in 1988. This is what's going to kick off the danger that I'm talking about. This danger of that you start to feel when you think about the Attitude Era. Because Vince McMahon thinks he's on top of the world. He's got Hulk Hogan. He's invented WrestleMania.
Right.
Which he creates... Yeah, go ahead.
So WrestleMania was specifically a WWF thing to start out with?
Mm-hmm.
And was that like right off the bat?
Vince McMahon buys the company from his father and immediately says, I've got an idea.
Okay.
And
so WrestleMania is like synonymous with WWF and... Okay.
Yeah, so Vince McMahon says, I've got an idea and I'm going to bridge wrestling with pop culture.
Okay.
The headline match of the first WrestleMania is Rowdy Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff versus Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. Because and the cover, the poster for WrestleMania 1 is Hulk Hogan with his arm around Mr. T, pointing at you like, we want you. Because Vince McMahon has this idea of, I'm going to make professional wrestling not seen as this niche sport, but as something that is pure entertainment that anyone can turn on. I want to make these wrestlers into characters, into superheroes.
Now, Mr. T at that point, was this pre or post the A-Team?
This would be post A-Team.
Okay, so people already know him from the A-Team.
Was
Which is... No. Good.
was he a wrestler?
No, he was an actor.
Okay. Well, yeah, he was an actor, but I mean, like, so did he join in on, like, did Vince McMahon go out to him and say, hey, I want you as a wrestler?
He wanted him as a celebrity guest.
As a celebrity
and
guest.
so,
okay.
because he had
It was like a selling point for the first WrestleMania?
Mhm.
Okay.
And there are plenty of other actual... Cyndi Lauper is there. There are plenty of...
Wrestling?
Well, she does a...
Or is she like a musical guest type?
Kind of, sort of. What she does is she's kind of in the manager role in a match.
So Mr. T fought?
Yeah, so, and remember, to be a wrestler in the ring, you need to know an entire secondary language. So if I said, Gabe, if I said the word to you, all right, sell this one. Do you know what I mean?
Ham it up?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like sell this one. Or if I say, I'm going to give you a receipt. Do you know what that means?
The fight's gonna end?
No, so to give a receipt means you want your punches to look like they're landing.
Okay.
If you go and you land for real and you land hard, you go and land hard back to tell them back up.
Okay.
You hit me, not just hit me for real, but you hit me and it hurt. And I'm going to hit you back to make it hurt. Because you can't just talk in the ring. Sometimes they do. A lot of times if you see the guy in a headlock,
They're whispering?
they're whispering into their ear, and they'll say something like turnbuckle splash, but they'll do that, and they'll sort of do that thing. But there's a whole other language. So when you bring in Mr. T, who has never been in a wrestling match before, you have people like Roddy Piper saying, I'm going to legitimately hurt this guy in the ring. Because... But
at the same time, he's an actor, so doesn't that kind of make sense?
Yeah,
well,
you'd think he would understand.
And this is where Vince McMahon starts to lose a subsection of his audience, and this is why he can't take the South.
Oh.
Because he is making wrestling into superhero fiction, while the South loves
the violence.
Sometimes the violence,
Shocking.
sometimes they love the idea of, let me put it this way, they didn't smart up yet. No, and that's a phrase in wrestling.
They just assumed that, this is real. And
Ours is the real wrestling, theirs is the fake wrestling. Because the southern wrestling regions were still doing it by the book that made it look real.
Okay.
While if you're watching professional wrestling and you've seen Hulk Hogan body slam 500-pound people,
yeah.
yet now Roddy Piper, who is a foot shorter than him, hurts him in a headlock. Like it just didn't play out in a way that they thought was believable. So that's another reason he can't take the South. And Ted Turner takes advantage of this, consolidates all these together, and makes the WCW.
Mm-hmm.
And Ted Turner's got one other thing that Vince McMahon doesn't have.
Which is?
More money than God. Vince McMahon is not the, quote, billionaire that he is today.
Okay.
If he even still has the billionaire status. He's lost it and gained it so many times.
Well.
He's not even close to it yet.
Okay.
Ted Turner is.
Right.
So, Ted Turner creates this amalgamation, and he says, you know what I can do with all my money? The same fucking thing that Vince did to everybody else. I'll buy all of Vince's talent. So in 1993, Ted Turner says, hey, Hulk Hogan, here's a contract that will keep you set for life.
Oh.
And he says, you work half as many days as Vince is telling you, and I will pay you regardless of whether or not you work. So even if you get injured in the ring, you're still seeing a paycheck. Even if you are guaranteed, it's called a guaranteed contract.
Huh.
And he offers Hulk Hogan so much money that Hulk Hogan says, see ya.
Yeah, really.
And he leaves, and Vince is kind of caught with his pants down. And he's like,
the first of many occasions.
The first of many occasions. You know a little something about Vince McMahon.
Just a little bit.
So he's sitting there like, what the hell am I going to do? So in the early 90s, he desperately tries to build up a couple of new wrestlers, which he calls the new generation. Because he loses Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Roddy Piper. He loses all the big names.
To WCW?
To WCW.
Okay.
Andre the Giant at this point has retired and soon has passed.
Okay.
Right? The barrels are empty and he needs to reload. So he starts something called the New Generation, where wrestlers along the lines of Bret the Hitman Hart and Shawn Michaels come along. He also brings in someone who will be known as arguably one of the greatest wrestlers to ever live, The Undertaker.
Okay.
And he's bringing in all these new characters, but he just can't get a formula down. None of these wrestlers are pulling in money the way his previous ones were. One of the big issues, again, is that he's falling into gimmicks. There's that whole early 90s time period is known as the day job era, because every wrestler for some reason had a day job. You had Isaac Yankem, a professional wrestler who was a dentist on his spare time.
In real life,
yeah.
No, that's the character. So all the characters had day jobs. There was Erwin R. Shyster, who was a IRS tax agent, who was a professional wrestler during nights. So the idea is he has all these hammy characters, and again, the South is just like, that's baby shit.
Yeah.
This is the real shit.
Okay.
We've got Ric Flair, Sting. We've got the real professional wrestlers. So, and now we've got Hulk Hogan. And so Vince McMahon is banking everything on a handful of wrestlers. He's banking it all on Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. These four names. And these four names are really important. What ends up happening is, at a certain point, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, known as Razor Ramon and Diesel under WWE, are offered contracts by WCW. They immediately take them. Immediately. Hulk Hogan's like, take this, you're set for life. They take them. And single-handedly, those two guys break what they call kayfabe, or the fake wrestling like persona. Because no one admits to wrestling being staged at this point.
Sure.
If you're a bad guy, you have a separate locker room than the good guys.
Okay.
You don't stay in the same hotels.
Okay.
You keep the character outside.
So they're doing a lot of method acting.
Yes.
Wow.
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, in their final match at WWE, before they go to WCW, have their cage match, and they hug Shawn Michaels and Triple H in the ring. Two good guys in this sense.
Yeah.
Completely breaking kayfabe forever.
Oh.
They didn't know. It wasn't being televised, but a bunch of amateurs caught it on camera. And now officially, the South gets to say, those guys are fake.
Yeah. And
The
what
good guys
year
just-
is this?
96.
Okay.
They come in 96.
So these guys at WCW are really trying to take down WWF at the time still?
Vince McMahon.
It's because the fact that they poached all those other guys to begin with, and now they're going for these new guys that he recently hired. They're really gunning for them.
They have more money than God. I mean, Ted Turner, like Vince McMahon owns a professional wrestling company. Ted Turner owns broadcast stations.
Yeah.
The guy has so much money that he's not even feeling this.
Did Ted Turner have, obviously, he just witnessed Vince McMahon do this, saw the money he was making, decided, I want to make a wrestling...
A little bit. I think it had to do with the fact...
Or did they have a history with each other?
They didn't have a history with each other from what's been reported, from what I've read.
That sounds very personal at some level.
I think the personal part of it comes from the fact that Ted Turner had admitted, now he said this on camera, he's promoting his own business, so who knows, but he had said he was a huge wrestling fan. So he might have been one of those scorned fans who was like, what the hell is this? What's a gobbledygooker, and why is it running around the ring on Thanksgiving?
So WCW is more of just like the South's wrestling?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what they
he was trying to return it back to...
And they're trying to be more serious.
Yeah.
Now, they've poached all the talent. Vince McMahon's got two big names left in Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels cannot be trusted. He is, at this time in his life, is known as one of the most underhanded, one of the most backstabbing, one of the most untrustworthy workers that you can go into the ring with. The guy will show up late, he'll lie to your face, but Vince McMahon loves him. And Vince McMahon says, hey, Bret Hart was my big guy, But Shawn, I think you might be the next big star.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to explode, and this dynamic, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Vince McMahon, and the pressure of WCW from the outside
Mm-hmm.
are going to cause the Attitude Era single-handedly.
Okay.
Because on November 9th, 1997, Bret Hart is the world champion of WWE right now. And Bret Hart says to Vince, I've been offered a contract from WCW. I'm going to take it unless you can offer me more. And Vince says, I can't offer you more. I just can't.
Mm-hmm.
And Bret says, sorry, I got to think about my family. I got to take it. And Vince says to Bret, okay, you've got to drop the title. You've got to, in your next match, you need to drop the title and you're going to lose it to Shawn Michaels.
Mm-hmm.
Bret doesn't like Shawn.
Okay.
He says, can I drop it to someone else? Anybody? Can I drop it to someone else? Well, no, we want Shawn Michaels to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where am I going to drop it? You're going to drop it on at Survivor Series November 9th, 97. Wait a minute, that's in Canada. Yeah, that's going to be in my hometown of Canada. You're going to have me, a hero, lose my belt in my hometown to someone I don't like. Vince says, you got to do it. You can't leave the company holding the belt. You're going to...
Yeah.
WCW will say, we even took their champion. They don't even have a... We took them.
Yeah.
Vince is telling him, you got to do it. And Bret Hart's like, I'm not going to do it. What I'll do is I'll do you a favor, Vince. Maybe you let me win tonight. I'll do one more match out of contract and I'll drop it to Shawn on Monday. Or I'll whatever the next date is before I've got to jump to WCW. So there's a lot of debate going on.
Mm-hmm.
Bret leaves the office and all the writers are sitting in the room. And they know Bret's...
Yeah.
They're like, this is not going to work. We're going to lose the champion WCW. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to lose our business. Mm-hmm. One of the writers at the time named Jim Cornette sits there and says, Vince, it's your f***ing belt. It's your f***ing business. Double cross the guy. Just do it. Who cares? We have been doing this for generations. He's going to go in the ring, get Shawn to put him in a submission hold, and tell the ref, regardless of what Bret does, to count it as though Bret tapped out, as though Bret forfeited the match. Mm-hmm. And Vince is kind of a little not too keen on this. And he says, it's either that or you're going to lose your business. What do you want?
Yeah.
So November 9th, 1997, that happens.
Okay.
With all the pressures going on, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels have a match. Shawn Michaels puts Bret Hart in front of Bret Hart's hometown and Bret Hart's own submission move. And the ref was told by Vince, when that happens, you ring the bell, you call for the match to end, we give the title to Shawn, and everyone get the hell out of the arena. Because Bret's going to lose his mind. And that he did. Because Bret at this point is significantly stronger than Shawn Michaels, if you look at their body types. Yeah. Bret forces himself out of this sharpshooter, sees Vince outside, spits on his face,
oh my God,
writes the words WCW in the air to advertise for the competition, gets out of the ring, grabs all of the monitors, smashes them, starts flipping tables.
Oh my God.
And when they get backstage, he punches Vince McMahon in the eye.
So how many steroids was he on at this point?
The steroid scandal may be touched upon, but who knows?
Because that doesn't sound like normal people behavior.
At this point, though, I'm pretty sure... At this point, the steroid scandal was going on, so the likelihood of Bret being on steroids is minimal. But also, Bret comes from a professional wrestling family. You know Owen Hart? We watched the Owen Hart documentary.
Yes, I do remember that.
Right? So he comes from a family of professional wrestlers, and what Vince just did was completely... In his mind...
Disgraced the family or something like that.
He disgraced the business, while Vince is saying, it's a time-honored tradition for the champion to drop the belt if he's going to leave. You don't walk away with that. You don't do that. Mm-hmm. So, now, everything is in shambles. WCW has everything. That is when the Attitude Era starts. Because Vince McMahon is now completely out of talent, and WCW has everything. WCW did something else in particular that was very strong. They took Hulk Hogan, this baby-faced hero, this all-American, I am a real American, right? Fight for the rights of every man. They take him, and they say, wait a minute. We got Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And we had them come in, and their storyline is that they're these outsiders who want to undermine our own business.
Mm-hmm.
So we're using Vince's own guys as bad guys in our business. What if we take Hulk Hogan and turn him into a villain? And what if we have him start a team of villains called the NWO? And these team of villains at WCW bring the ratings through the roof.
Okay.
And for 84 weeks, WCW beats WWE in the ratings.
Wow.
Substantially. And
because of Hulk Hogan being...
Because of Hulk Hogan turning heel, being a villain, he becomes a villain. He starts this whole movement in the whole plot line of this hero going dark and having a team of bad guys with him, and they're trying to hijack the WCW because their goal is to rename WCW into NWO. And so they make one mistake, though, WCW. They have a professional wrestler that they don't know what to do with.
Okay.
And his name is Steve Austin.
I don't know much about the guy besides you showing me the video clip of him driving into the goddamn stadium with a beer truck.
I know he's stone cold.
He's not Stone Cold yet.
Oh.
So WCW has this guy, Steve Austin. You don't know what to do with him. They fire him. Vince McMahon picks him up. Vince McMahon, a lot of things happen, but Vince McMahon uses him in 1996. He uses him, and he has the Steve Austin guy win the King of the Ring tournament, where he beats Jake the Snake Roberts and everything else, and he's supposed to be a bad guy. Steve Austin, after winning, gets on in front of like this big throne, and Michael P. Hayes, this announcer, says, well, Stone Cold, well, Steve Austin, looks like you've just won, and, what do you have to say? And Steve Austin, off the cuff, starts talking about the wrestler he just beat. And he says, the first thing I want to be done is to get that piece of crap out of my ring. Don't just get him out of the ring. Get him out of the WWF, because I've proved, son, without a shadow of a doubt, you ain't got what it takes anymore. You sit there and you thump your Bible and you say your prayers, and it didn't get you anywhere. Talk about your Psalms, talk about your John 3:16. Well, Austin 3:16 says, I just whooped your ass.
Yikes.
The crowd explodes.
Was he fighting a priest?
No, he was fighting Jake the Snake Roberts, who was having some personal issues going on and was turning to... So he's broken kayfabe. He's utilizing...
his real life situation.
That's kind of fucked.
And he's invented this Austin 3:16.
Okay.
Which is the Bible.
I've seen that a lot all over his t-shirts, and I always wondered, is this a real thing? But I never bothered to Google Austin 3:16.
Yeah, in the book of Stone Cold, Austin 3:16 says, I just whooped your ass. And so they start printing shirts. They start running with this guy. And Vince is thinking to himself, holy shit.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. What just happened? And so something else is happening simultaneously. After what's called the Montreal Screwjob, the thing where Bret Hart in the title and everything else, Vince McMahon goes on television and tries to be the hero. He tries to say, well, Bret Hart, and he's got a black eye. He says, Bret Hart, the time-honored tradition, he should have this. And everybody says, look at this.
Yeah.
Like, this guy, listen, the way they're interpreting it is, hey, you told him to take a fall. You told him you're going to lose this match. And the wrestler himself said, that ain't going to happen.
This is interesting. The only thing I ever knew about wrestling was I don't know if it was you that told me or you sent me a video, but the poaching thing. I remember seeing a clip where it was, someone had the map and they're like, this is this section. And then WWE started or WWF, and he was grabbing all these different stars from all these locations and changing the name of the game. And that's the only thing I really knew. So
there's a whole WCW side to this, and I'm just focusing on WWF.
Yeah.
And giving you little inklings of what you need from WCW. So the people who are watching are saying to themselves, you told our hero, Bret Hart, to, take a fall, and he didn't. And you guys screwed him over. And you know what? He's going to WCW. We're going to go watch WCW, Vince, because you screwed over our favorite wrestler. So this is hurting him even more, trying to be a hero about it. So Vince is getting all this heat. He's getting all this hate. And he thinks to himself, what if I embrace that? Everybody sees him as just the guy who controlling the strings. What if he becomes a hero, like a character?
Vince McMahon himself?
Yes.
Okay.
And so Vince McMahon creates his alternate persona called Mr. McMahon, who is...
It's really creative.
Well, that's how he... Well, because he wants to keep the fact that he's the owner of the company.
Yeah,
Sure.
that makes sense.
But that's the way that they refer to him. Oh, Mr. McMahon. When the storylines are going.
Mm-hmm.
So he starts to embrace it. And he starts to become a villain. And with Stone Cold Steve Austin, that's how he goes by at WWF, rising as he starts as a villain, but people love him so much that Vince kind of realizes that I'm his opposite. The intensity, the positive intensity that they feel for him is the same as the negative intensity that they feel for me. They become the stars of his show. And if he's looking at his professional wrestling as a TV show where you tune in and you follow storylines, they're the main characters. Main protagonist, main antagonist.
Okay.
And then there are plenty of secondary characters that are beloved. The Rock, Undertaker, Kane, Mankind, Triple H, Chyna, eventually Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist of 1996, for actual wrestling at the Olympics. Mark Henry, the world's strongest man winner of 1996. Rikishi, Edge, he brings in these tag teams, the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, DX. He has two of the most iconic ring announcers ever in Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler. If you ever hear someone go, "By God!" that's Jim Ross, right? He starts saying, okay, I can't be the one to poach talent.
Mm-hmm.
I have to now find it.
Okay.
And so he starts building with all these new characters. And people start to say, you know what? I've been watching Hulk Hogan for like over a decade now. And yeah, Hulk Hogan's a bad guy. But Steve Austin is driving a beer truck
and
into the arena.
Yeah.
And I get to watch him grab a hose and hose down the owner of the company, who I despise. This is the show for me. I get to watch Steve Austin take a cement truck and pour cement into Vince McMahon's multi-million-dollar car. And
what's with all these trucks?
He embodies the American spirit.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
I guess.
Steve Austin is just nothing but
so,
all American.
Yeah, if I have to describe Steve Austin as a character, he's chaos incarnate.
Okay.
That's his whole shebang.
Right.
He comes out, he flips off the crowd.
Okay.
When he wins a match, he calls for a couple beer cans. They get thrown to him by the ringside announcers.
Shotguns it.
And he shotguns both of them. He throws them over his head and he flips off the crowd, and everybody eats it up.
And he's the good guy?
That's shocking.
He's the first ever anti-hero in what used to... You have to think, now we're in 97, 98. Just 4 or 5 years previously, we had IRS and Isaac Yankem and the Brooklyn Brawler, who was a baseball player who was out of work, and we had a Manitor who was a professional wrestler who came out in a big old furry Minotaur head, and on the opening day he comes out, he can't get the head through the ring.
Yeah.
and he gets stuck. So Vince McMahon went from that to characters who are flipping off the crowd to becoming a villain who is the most vile creature imaginable. And he brings in, I talk about Undertaker, who was kind of one of those gimmicky characters. He's an undead.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, he's come back from the dead.
Was that his day job, was being an Undertaker?
Well, so kind of sort of in that timeline. But in the Attitude Era, they said...
Is that why you started your mortuary business after the Undertaker?
Yeah, that is actually why.
Wow.
But what did they do during the Attitude Era? All right, Undertaker, you're a cultist now. And so what does he do? During one plot line, he kidnaps Vince McMahon's daughter. He crucifies Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh my God.
No, he crucifies
Too
him.
much.
And so he has a cult with him. Mankind, also known as Mick Foley. He was in WCW. He was in ECW. His character in WWE is Mankind. He wears like this kind of borderline Hannibal Lecter mask, and he's kind of crazy and deranged, and he's always kind of sad, and he's just like, Vince, I'll do anything you say. You want me to break my body for you? I'll do it. I'll do it.
Oh my god.
And Vince is like, mankind, you were supposed to take care of Steve Austin last week, and you couldn't. So this week, as punishment, you're going to go 2-on-1 against DX, or against, the New Age Outlaws. And he'll go, well, Mr. McMahon, it's no fair. How am I supposed to beat both of
Oh
them?
my god. He's like
I remember him.
kind of.
Yeah, and Vince McMahon walks, and this is a specific episode, he walks away and grabs a baking sheet and a candlestick holder and hands it to him, and he says, you'll beat him how you always do, using weapons.
What the
And
hell?
so he takes the baking sheet and he's like, which way is the ring, boss? And he like grabs like a steel chair, and he goes into the ring in this episode, and he gets the ever living shit kicked out of him.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I just want to make Mr. McMahon happy.
Master.
Yeah, master of the plans. The Undertaker, who's a cultist, in one of the most groundbreaking events to ever happen in professional wrestling, he is in a cage match with Shawn Michaels. And at this point, Shawn Michaels has the title. This is early 98. This is the Attitude Era has just begun. And what they want to do is they say to themselves, all right, Shawn Michaels, we can't trust him.
Mm-hmm.
He's had drug problems. He's had a lot of issues. We need to get him out, and we need to get that belt on Steve Austin. So we're going to build to WrestleMania of 98, and in 98, we're going to have Steve Austin beat Shawn Michaels, and he's going to carry the title, and that's going to be the thing. But we need to have some entertaining matches with Shawn Michaels building up to that date. So there's a match between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn Michaels can't lose to The Undertaker because he needs to lose to Steve Austin, but they also don't want to make Undertaker look like he can't win.
Right.
What do? They introduce a new character named Kane, Undertaker's long-lost brother who he believed burned in a fire, who comes out dressed all in red with a mask on covering his scarred face. And Kane walks up to the cage door, rips it off, and completely tombstones The Undertaker and leaves. And that starts a whole plot line of who is Kane. There's an episode where Kane finally speaks. They advertise it, Monday Night Raw, you'll hear Kane speak. Kane gets in the ring, and Paul Bearer, who used to be Undertaker's manager, is now Kane's manager, because Paul Bearer is like, Undertaker! I found your brother! And he's also my son! I f***ed your mom! Not even kidding.
God.
Not even kidding. So...
Ridiculous.
So, when Kane finally speaks, do you know how he... have you ever...
I've never heard him speak. I used
Here's
to
how
have
it-
some toys of him, and I always thought his getup was kind of cool, and I feel like it's going to be ruined now.
No, it's amazing, because he's up there, and you're like, this guy's voice will never live up to it. Paul Bearer pulls out one of those things that you put to your neck when you've had...
Oh my god.
like when you
Yeah.
have a hole put in your throat because of smoking?
Yeah.
He puts one to his throat, because the character has been burned in a fire.
Oh my
It
god.
makes the story makes sense, and you're just freaked. It transcends storytelling. No, it does. The WWF Attitude Era is some of the greatest television ever put to screen.
Can I tell you what this sounds like to me?
What's that?
It sounds like a mix of like old time horror movie, like hear the monster speak next.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 mixed with Maury.
Yes.
With
Well-
like all the trashy drama of Maury.
Well, part of
and
that
Jerry Springer.
Part of that comes from... Jerry Springer, exactly. Because one of the things that they did was they had a writer's room that wasn't working.
Okay.
So they realized that the sales of their WWF magazine were really good. And they were like, what's this all about? And Vince McMahon, who just kind of lets things run in some cases, looked at the magazine and he's like, wait a minute, why is there swimsuit models? Like, what's going on? And they call in the guy in charge, whose name is Vince Russo.
How many Vinces are there in this company?
Long story short, Vince Russo is poison.
Oh.
He will unintentionally bring the downfall of WCW. But we're getting there. But Vince brings him in and Vince says, you kid, you're going to join our writing staff. And Vince Russo says, listen, I'm going to be real, Vince. You know, I know how to write the magazine. I don't know shit about wrestling, but I love Jerry Springer. And he says, all right, kid, tell us some stories. And he's the one who starts bringing in a little bit of the edge to it, the attitude, as Vince Russo would call it.
And so is this why it's called the Attitude Era?
Yes.
Because it's like, oh, I f***ed your mom, and, you know, I'm going to hose you down with a beer can and then put cement in your car.
Yeah. Now, here's something that Vince is capable of doing about Vince Russo, the WCW later is incapable of doing. Vince has a team of writers, and he's got a team of experienced writers, some of them from the South, and they know when to tell Vince Russo, that idea is a piece of shit, we're not going to use it.
Okay.
So they're filtering his stuff.
That's shocking.
Which is so important, because later it becomes so bad. Vince Russo's there for a couple, maybe about a year or so, before they get rid of him. But his Jerry Springer effect on the show changes the direction. So WrestleMania is coming around in '98. Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin. This is where everything's going to culminate. This is where we're going to put the belt on Austin. This is where we're going to run, and this is where hopefully they're going to break the 84-week streak of WCW. But last WrestleMania didn't do too well. Neither did the one before. And they need to figure out a way to go and raise those buy rates. How many people are going to buy this pay-per-view? And Vince remembers his roots. Wait a minute, the first WrestleMania we brought in Mr. T. What if this WrestleMania we have Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels, and we have a special guest referee? What if we call Mike Tyson?
Huh.
Mike Tyson becomes the special guest of that match.
Mm-hmm.
The storyline is that Mike Tyson has joined Shawn Michaels and his group that they call DX.
Mm-hmm.
And he says things that you're really not supposed to say on cable television about Steve Austin, where he calls him a couple F words, derogatory terms, everything else.
Uh-oh.
So it's a discriminatory term starting with an F with two G's in it.
Gotcha.
So
Yikes.
at WrestleMania, Mike Tyson, who we think is on Shawn Michaels' side, turns on Shawn Michaels, knocks him out. Steve Austin punches him right into a Steve Austin Stone Cold Stunner. Steve Austin wins. Shawn Michaels is out of the picture. He's gonna go away for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And now this new, Vince McMahon finally's got his foothold.
Okay.
Here he is. He's got the Attitude Era. And from that point forward, from a couple weeks after that forward, it becomes a week-by-week basis of ratings. Sometimes WCW wins, sometimes WWF wins, and then slowly but steadily WWF begins to outpace WCW. They start to win more because they have people like Steve Austin, The Rock, Undertaker, Kane, Triple. I mean, they've got he's essentially built his company all over again. The screws were put to him, and in a desperate hour, he was capable of making all the right decisions.
Mm-hmm.
There were some mistakes made during that time, too. Look up the Brawl for All. I mean, it ended the career of multiple wrestlers. But still, he pushes it in the right direction. During this time, they introduced WWE Raw, or WWF Raw, which is their Monday night show. It competes with WCW's Nitro on Monday nights, so they compete on ratings. On one episode of WCW Nitro, the guy that Ted Turner put in charge of WCW, Eric Bischoff, goes on television and says, because Nitro is live and WWE at this point is taped at this specific time, and he goes on and says, well, you don't want to turn to the other channel because if you turn to the other channel, you're just going to see Mankind win the WWE title. And who wants to see that guy with the WWE? So he's giving away the endings to Vince McMahon's show. Here's the thing, though. Mankind never won the title. And that was so exciting to people that the ratings plummeted that night for WCW because everyone jumped to the other channel to see that happen.
So did they just, guess at WCW just to, throw off, in an attempt to steal ratings from WWE? Did they just make up what the ending was going to be?
No, they would get... So the thing is, because WWE was pre-taped at this point,
right.
The show had happened, they taped it, and anybody who went and saw the show live talked about it.
Oh, so they said, Mankind will win, and he does?
He does, because it's already happened, and it's about to be broadcast.
Okay.
While they're like, but our stuff's live, anything can happen. people turned and watched the tape show because you just advertised for them.
Oops.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, I could watch WCW and maybe something exciting will happen. But I know if I watch WWF, I'm going to watch Mankind win the title for the first time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of underhanded tactics going on here. Things are just so... It is a full-blown war. To the point where it's called WWE Raw.
Mm-hmm.
The logo turns into Raw is, and then under it, War, which is just Raw mirrored.
Oh.
And there's a storyline where DX, this group of like renegade professional wrestlers, jump onto a military
Humvee.
Yeah, Humvee. Yeah, it's smaller than that, but this little Jeep sort of thing with a mounted gun on the back, and they drive up to the WCW arena and start firing shots above the arena, and they're like, "The war is now!" So it becomes television that can never be done again because of how it died, and this gets us to the end here. So WCW attempts to create a secondary show to build up excitement. They tried WCW Thunder. WWE matches them, creates WWE SmackDown. It becomes more successful than WCW. Vince McMahon told Vince Russo, get lost. Vince Russo goes to WCW, convinces them that he was the brains behind the Attitude Era. Turns out he wasn't. All he did was add the Jerry Springer twist.
Mm-hmm.
They let him write for WCW.
Mm-hmm.
And WCW becomes a money pit. Because he writes storylines like, Stacy Keibler is going to have a mud wrestling match this episode. But in the middle of the match, she's going to hold her stomach and start screaming. And then they're going to put her on a gurney and wheel her out. And the next episode will say that she had a miscarriage because she didn't know.
Oh my God!
And no one's on board with this.
No.
Yeah.
So Vince Russo, from the inside, is
Took it down?
There's an episode...
Unintentionally took it down, or...
No, Vince knew when to tell that guy to get lost.
Okay.
And WCW didn't have the experience.
And he draws the line at miscarriage.
And know what he did? Vince McMahon knew that anybody that Vince couldn't keep, WCW was going to buy them. Because that's how they've been winning. Oh, you work for McMahon? Yeah, come with us. Come with us.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us his trade secrets. Tell us what he does. Tell us exactly how he works. So he took somebody that was poison.
Yeah.
And said, here, look, it's a delicious bowl of soup. This is the guy who started the Attitude Era. And they brought him in, and he bombs the WCW from the inside.
Yikes.
So WCW is collapsing. WWF is becoming the largest thing imaginable. He opens a restaurant in Times Square.
Really?
Yeah, which eventually closed down.
Of course.
The company goes public, so it starts publicly trading stocks.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes huge.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, though, in 2001, AOL buys Time Warner, American Online. And they start reevaluating where all the money is going in Turner's broadcasting and everything else. And they say, what the hell is this money sink wrestling thing that you're running?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no, screw this. We're not putting any more money into this WCW thing. And WCW needs to either turn a profit or find somebody else to become their new station. Vince McMahon says to AOL, give me a price. And they say, I forget how many $1 million. But they give it to him pennies on the dollar. Just because AOL's cleaning house. Vince says, I'll buy it.
Wow.
On the final episode of WCW, there is a simultaneous cast where you turn on WCW and you expect to see WCW wrestlers. And it's Vince McMahon looking you right in the eye and saying, oh, I bet you didn't expect to see me here. Yes, that's right. I bought my competition.
Yes.
And you all belong to me now.
That's some psycho behavior, though.
It's good television.
It is good television.
It's good
And you want to know something even crazier? He's so on the money with this that he says to himself, it's not enough that I enhance my heelness, my villainess, by doing that. I need to go one step further. I need to be able to take this storyline and carry it into my show. I own this now. That means I need to keep WCW running to some capacity. I now own the contracts of all these wrestlers. I got to merge them with my company. This is a whole merger. I have to take all their titles and merge them with my titles. I've got to do all this shit. So what does he do? he's on the television and he says, I bought WCW. I own my competition. And then his son interrupts the broadcast. And the son is on WCW. And Vince is now on WWF at the same time on 2 different stations. And Vince's son, Shane McMahon, says, well, you know, the buyout does have the last name McMahon on it, but it doesn't say Vince. And he goes, Dad, I beat you to it. I bought WCW.
Oh my god.
And he does it because he knows now I can start a plot line where my son and I,
with my son.
where I feud publicly with my son on television about this thing. And then they do this whole thing called an invasion angle where the wrestlers from WCW are coming in, they're invading. All this crazy stuff is happening. The Attitude Era comes to an end with multiple little caveats. The 2 biggest wrestlers there, Steve Austin and The Rock. The Rock has built himself up to become Steve Austin's equal in many ways. Steve Austin, seen as the main character. If you watch the opening to WWF Monday Night Raw from 97 to 2001, I want to say, the opening looks like the opening to just a regular, it doesn't look like an opening of wrestling, it looks like an opening of a regular television show. Where if you watch an opening of modern wrestling, they do a montage of all the wrestlers doing like faces and stuff. WWF Raw is War at this time, their opening montage is this heavy, hard rock music, and they show like this warehouse opening up, and there's this big war going on. There are people running through this bunker, and there are bombs going off, and there's explosions, and in all of this chaos and in all this mess, Stone Cold Steve Austin is marching through it, his back to the camera, with the Austin 316 on the back of his vest. And he is just marching through, and the music's hitting, and then it cuts to him punching people, and they montage his face covered in blood. He's the main character. To lose him is to almost lose the Attitude Era, and that's what they do.
Oh.
What ends up happening is they lose The Rock to Hollywood.
Yeah.
The Rock ends up going and starring in
The Mummy.
The Mummy Returns, The Scorpion King. Steve Austin has done so much to protect his character. One of the things he agrees to do with Vince McMahon is Vince McMahon says to him, we've got all these extra wrestlers from WCW now. Things are going haywire. We've got so many, quote, good guys. I think we need to stir the pot. I need you to become a bad guy.
Okay.
The worst decision he could ever make. Nobody likes villainous Stone Cold. They want to cheer for him.
Yeah.
There are technically 3 different moments where you can say the Attitude Era ended. The first moment you can say it possibly ended is the moment that Steve Austin and Vince McMahon hug in the middle of the ring, and they join forces. Everybody goes, that ain't gonna stick with me.
Yeah.
The second moment could be when the WWF gets sued by the WWF,
Yeah.
the World Wildlife Federation.
Yes, yeah.
And they have to do a whole campaign that's called Get the F Out. Where they change, there's an ad where they've got the old WWF logo, and the WWF logo sits in a barber chair, and he says, just a little off the top, and the barber cuts the F off of the logo.
That's fine.
And so their whole campaign's Get the F Out. That starts to shift the identity of what the Attitude Era becomes.
Okay.
You've also lost WCW as a competitor. The danger's gone.
Right.
Without that danger, there aren't so many people hectically trying to prove something, to keep their jobs alive. And finally, it was losing Steve Austin because they get a guy named Brock Lesnar into professional wrestling. They get Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is an NCAA professional wrestling or amateur wrestling champion. He's got all these accolades, everything else. He's a dick. They bring him in, and Vince says, this guy Brock Lesnar, he's the next big thing. Spoiler, Brock Lesnar lasts 2 years in the business before he disappears for a decade and then comes back in the past 5 years.
Okay.
So they put all their money onto him. And Vince tells Austin, you're going to lose to Brock Lesnar at the next pay-per-view. Austin says, what's the storyline? What's the plot? Austin and Vince says, you're going to lose to him. You're going to go in, put on a good show, and then lose to him. Austin says, not if you don't build up a storyline. Says, well, we want Brock to win next week because we've got a whole strategy for him. So, or in the next pay-per-view. We don't have time to build up a storyline. Austin says, I'm not going to do it. And Vince has been in this position before with Brett. He's been in the position of, oh, wait a minute, I have a wrestler who's not going to do something. So he thinks to himself, crap, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I can't have the same situation happen again. So he asserts his authority this time versus last time. And he says to Austin, you either go in the ring and you lose to Brock, or you can walk out. And Austin says, okay. And he leaves.
Wow.
On the next night of Monday Night Raw, Vince McMahon comes into the ring and apologizes on behalf of Stone Cold. He says, Steve Austin abandoned you all. He left all of you.
Oh my God.
He puts him down, and then he takes a beer can, opens it, puts it in the middle of the ring, and walks away. And you can almost stare at that beer can and say, that's where it ends.
Yeah.
There is the great overall. So I have one slightly different theory as to when it ends. This is the date that I give it. I give it June 27th, 2002. 1 year after many people would give it. Some people give it like January 2002 or whatever. Some people say 2001 when the buyout happened. I say June 27th, 2002 because the following era of wrestling is called the Ruthless Aggression Era. And it is called that because one professional wrestler enters the ring that changes the face of the company forever. They've lost Steve Austin. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They've lost Steve Austin. Brock Lesnar is not going to last. The Rock is gone. What are they going to do? Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle comes out to the ring and offers an open challenge to anybody who can beat him. And a professional wrestler comes out with, I don't remember if he has generic music or no music. He's in a pair of bright neon shorts. He's got his hair combed to the side. He comes in. Kurt Angle looks at him and he says, all right, kid, what's your name? He says, John Cena. Kurt Angle says, what makes you think that you have what it takes to be the best in this business, to beat me? And John Cena looks him in the face and says, ruthless aggression, and punches him in the face. I identify that as the end of the Attitude Era. That's the beginning of a whole different section we can talk about in a different episode. But that is when the enemy has been defeated. All your war heroes are gone. Mm-hmm. All of the people who carried you through the dark times. Mankind has retired at this point. China is gone. Like I said, The Rock, Steve Austin's gone. The Undertaker is back to his old gimmick. The war is over. The time of peace has come. They need to now, that they're the global power of professional wrestling, they need to say, oh my God, how do we create conflicts within our own wrestling? Which is where Vince McMahon takes his Raw show and his SmackDown show, which shared the same roster before. Every wrestler was doing double duty. All right, Steve Austin, you show up on Raw and you show up on SmackDown. The Rock, you do the same thing. Instead, he says, you guys only show up on Raw, and you have only show up on SmackDown. And if somebody wants to see John Cena, they have to watch SmackDown. If they want to see Chris Benoit, they have to watch Raw. If they want to see Eddie Guerrero, they have to... And all these names from the WCW are now there, and they're split up amongst these shows among WWE wrestlers, and you're now seeing matchups that you never thought you'd ever see. We end up, one of The Rock's last matches before he officially leaves for Hollywood is NWO Evil Hulk Hogan versus The Rock at WrestleMania. I mean, it's like, they never thought they'd see that. They thought that he was gone forever. This is post-war, this is post-heroes, this is post all of it. It's a new era. That's when I mark it as being dead. And to answer the question that I know is coming, natural causes.
Oh, really?
What do you think? From the story I told you.
I would have said it was murdered by Vince McMahon.
Yeah, he clearly tried pushing something on Steve Austin. He said, "Screw that."
Yeah.
And
okay.
And then
I like that as an outsider opinion. I mean, it's different, being someone who had watched it versus someone who just was told the story. So I like this. No, go ahead, please.
In like the 3 points that you told me that most people identify the era as being over, it sounds like those are all directly Vince McMahon's fault. And in the one that you point to that you would argue is the definite end, it seems like John Cena's fault.
I wouldn't say that's John Cena's fault. I think
guess.
his introduction was simply the evolution
And it was necessary.
necessary.
They needed the new guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And John Cena would become bigger than Hogan ever was, in my own opinion.
I don't think they simply could have replaced Stone Cold with someone new like John Cena. So they were like, we're gonna need something new, which is that ruthless aggression.
Ruthless aggression becomes the name of that generation.
Yeah, that generation. So I wouldn't say he killed it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say Vince McMahon definitely killed it by trying, forcing this stuff on Stone Cold, and he said no, and he was like, okay, then this is going to die. I need to have someone new who's going to start a new generation of wrestling. I would say it's Vince, no doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And you know what? I like that, and I'm going to agree to disagree, but I also I respect that because there are people who would agree. There are plenty of people who would agree with you guys.
Yeah.
Plenty. I'm on the side of saying, even if he didn't do that to Steve Austin, even if he said, you know what, Austin, you're on board, you'll lose to Brock, but we'll push the match 6 months. We'll let you build it up, and you can have the match at WrestleMania. It could be a big showcase, everything you want it to be.
Well,
even if he did that, the competition's gone, and how long is he going to hold on to Steve Austin?
But again, that's also Vince McMahon's
It is
fault.
him making,
He did all these things that led up to the
Yeah.
end of this era. So it was definitely. I can see why you say natural causes because it was bound to happen. I don't think you can keep this up.
No, because
there's no way.
He's a mortal man.
Yes.
Within the Attitude Era, or just before the Attitude Era, he breaks his neck. Has
for real?
For real. He has
yes, I
spinal
remember.
neck surgery,
Yeah,
experimental.
You see him with the cast and Mike talking.
Experimental that gets him back into the ring. He's got knee braces on both knees. He's a mortal man.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that is what makes it, means that it's not going to keep going. I just think that you would need to have a new character to replace Stone Cold right at the time where, this is still going, where you can replace someone, but you can't keep doing that. And since, he did kill off the competition, it makes it even harder to keep up that Attitude Era.
Yeah.
It's really a mix between natural causes and murdered.
And the Ruthless Aggression Era that comes after has hints of the Attitude, but then it also has its own tone.
Yeah.
And it's got all new wrestlers, all new characters and everything else, and all new scandals. So, I mean, they are very definitively cut, but then at the same time, I think to myself, like, it was just, when you're watching it live and you're experiencing it, it just seemed like the natural... The Steve Austin leaving doesn't feel natural. That feels forced.
Yeah.
But it just feels like the natural next step to say, this is the new direction we need to take. We need to take this hybrid model of, like, it becomes more... While the Attitude Era was Jerry Springer, the Ruthless Aggression Era was how crazy, intense, over the top can we make our matches? Like, and not just, like, throwing Mankind off the top of a Hell in a Cell. Oh, by God, he's been broken out. Anything, master, anything. Which is an infamous moment. But like, bringing in all of this new blood that comes in and says, hey, do you know I've got a 6-foot vertical leap and I can do multiple German suplexes within 5 seconds? Like, it's kind of this, let's make it more, because Steve Austin is a fine wrestler, but he's all character.
Mm-hmm.
He's not jumping off the top rope. He's not doing 619s. He's not doing frog splashes. He's not doing any of that shit. He's coming in and bashing a beer can over the dude's head, and he's flipping off the crowd. Kane has got 5 moves in his arsenal, and one of them is challenging someone to a burned alive match. During the Attitude Era, they introduced more match types than you can keep track of. Kane versus Steve Austin. Kane challenges into a first blood match. The first person to bleed loses.
That's crazy.
It's insanity.
I don't know how you can pick whether it's
murdered
tough. Or
it's tough
because clearly it needed to evolve. It couldn't have couldn't keep going. But it also feels like McMahon did this. You know what? No, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I think it simply died out. It faded away, and McMahon just sped it up.
Well, so I'll just argue on one point. Besides Stone Cold being the fading away, I feel like it ended in the climax it needed to. Vince won. He got all the talent. We got to see Hogan versus The Rock. It's the story of the North beating the South. It's the Civil War. It's post-Civil War. It's like it ended just like in glory and in this massive thing. And yeah, some of the parts kind of tittered out and shit themselves out really poorly. But
what I think what would solidify it for me would be viewer count and stuff. If it was clearly going down, then yes, natural causes.
Viewership never, to this day, has not ever reached the Attitude Era in terms of...
But before, I mean, like, when the Attitude Era was about to end, around that, like, was it constantly going up and then he killed it? Or was it starting to,
It was just starting to teeter. Like you saw it lower and then plateau at a lower number.
Yeah.
Which was still an insanely high number for any television.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's such a weird situation, but yeah, I'm gonna have to go with it just died out and came back something new.
I also think it's poetically just to say that Vince killed the very thing that he fought to create.
That's what I'd argue.
It's hard to...
No, I like it too.
I don't know which one to pick.
No, this may be the first...
We can mark it as inconclusive.
Yeah, I like that. I know. I like that a lot. This is the very first inconclusive autopsy.
Yeah.
I like that. So...
The boys in blue aren't going to like the report on this one.
Wow.
The boys in blue.
They're not going to like it.
Yeah. We'll get our mortuary license revoked.
We couldn't solve this one.
One little thing is that, of course, during this time, the merchandising exploded. You had crazy things. This is where professional wrestling action figures blew up. This is where the first ever like real seriously taken professional wrestling video games came out. The N64 was the big console at the time. I think like almost 8 or 9 different professional wrestling games came out at that time, both WCW and WWF. WWF No Mercy to this day, which was on the N64, is considered one of the greatest WWF games ever made because it has the best roster. It's got all the great heroes. It invented the create a character.
Yeah, this is the one with the crazy customization.
Customization. Like, so all of the like NBA, NFL games where like you get to create your own person and play as though you're a football player or a basketball player. The WWF No Mercy game pioneered that shit. That brought it into the forefront of video gaming. It's a huge cultural milestone in American television culture. To this day, you will still see people on the street wearing Austin 316 shirts. You'll still see people wearing DX shirts. Or NWO shirts I still see all the time. It was huge.
Well, if Gabe wants to get the chisel out, we can probably...
Yeah, so when we have a specific date for this one, too, that's a first.
That is a first.
Yeah.
Well, if we're going to go by, and because I'm the one recounting this, I'm going to go by the ruthless aggression moment, the John Cena moment as the death. We know for a fact that it could not continue on after that because they labeled the generation.
Mm-hmm.
November 9th, 1997, the day of the Montreal Screwjob, would be the day that Bret Hart had to drop the title, was forced to drop the title.
Mm-hmm.
It's the beginning of the Attitude Era, and the ending would be June 27th, 2002.
Okay.
Wow.
So.
Well, do you have any parting words to say to the Attitude Era before we wrap up, or?
Sure. I can be pretty brief on this and just say it. If you were watching it at the time, it just kind of it was so formative on your expectations for excitement on television. It's for fun, I go back and I watch the Attitude Era from beginning to end on the background. And there are times where I'm doing other things and I just have it playing in the background and I stop and I look up and I go, oh my God, wait, this is the moment where mankind gets thrown off the Hell in a Cell. This is the moment where there are these pinpoint definitive moments that get seared into your memory because it's such incredible storytelling with characters that some I haven't even mentioned. My memory, it was all encompassing. It was my action figure collection. It was my video game playing. It was what I talked about while at school every Tuesday or Monday if there was pay-per-view the night before. It was when the internet came around, which was towards the end of the Attitude Era and the beginning of Ruthless Aggression. It's what I would research on the internet and be like, oh my God, like, did it leak who won? Like, what's the plan? What's going on? Oh, I heard rumor that so-and-so's contract, like, it's all you thought about. And it was just, it's the golden age of wrestling. It is the top tier, or I should say the renaissance of wrestling. It was, if the golden era is the Hulk Hogan, Real American, take your vitamins sort of shit, then the WWF Attitude Era is the renaissance. It's where all the ideas come in. It's where you're painting the biggest, most miraculous painting. And I can go on forever, but I've gone on long enough. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It was very informative.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for visiting the Memory Mortuary. Our hosts are me, the Entity, and morticians Andreas Marangos, Esquire, and...
Whoa, Entity, I'll take it from here. For the thousands in attendance, and the millions listening at home, the Memory Mortuary proudly presents to you your undisputed heavyweight champion of Sonic Adventure 2, Battle! He is the 8-time co-host of the Memory Mortuary and counting, the most electrifying man in morbid entertainment, Gabe!
Thank you, Andreas. Our cover illustrator and graphic designer is Emily Barksdale. Our intro music was composed and performed by Christian Demertel. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow or subscribe on whatever platform you are listening on. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Memory Mortuary. We'd love to hear your feedback on these platforms. Join us next week as we perform another autopsy here at the Memory Mortuary. We're sorry for your loss.